good evening together. To begin our service this evening, Austin is going to lead us in some songs. Thank you, Austin, for leading us in those songs. Tonight, what we are going to think about is sometimes called the doctrine of vocation. And in basic, simple terms, vocation is what we do. We might use words like livelihood sometimes, and that's a pretty good explanation, or not explanation, it's a pretty good synonym for some of us who have jobs that we go to and get paid to do. Sometimes our occupations as well, though, are things that we're not paid to do, but it's still what we do. So our occupation is what we spend our time doing, and how we do that, how we connect that to our faith, to our lives as Jesus' disciples, is what we kind of like to think about tonight. A couple verses that kind of explain a little of this concept are found in the book of Colossians. It's in chapter 3, and you certainly don't need to turn there, but Paul is writing here, and he is specifically addressing people who he calls servants, which in some cases were probably slaves in those days. Servants today is not a very commonly used term either. But he tells them in verse 22 that they are to obey their masters. And he says this, then in verse 23, "And whatsoever you do, do it heartily, as unto the Lord, and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ." And so what Paul's saying here, even to people who found themselves in slavery and kind of obligated to work for others at others' orders without even getting paid to do it, like many of us are today, he says, do it heartily. Do it from your heart. Do it with all yourself. Put yourself into it, because you're doing it to the Lord and not to men. All right? You're serving the Lord Christ, and you'll receive your reward from him. And so what this tells us is that there is a way to do our occupation, do our livelihood, do what we're called to do, in a way that serves the Lord Christ. And God will reward us for that. Many of us spend a lot of time at our occupations. For some of us, it means we go to a job and we spend maybe 8 or 10, maybe longer hours. For some of us, that we may not go to a job, we may be self-employed. I don't know if any of you are here, and your hours are maybe a lot more irregular than a certain time schedule. Some of you tonight, your occupation is that you are a homemaker, you're a mother, maybe, or a wife, and that's what you do. And there's no time schedule. That's a lifestyle. It's just part of life. And of course, for some of us who are fathers, it's in some ways, maybe there's some analogies there too. But whatever we find to do, we can do it heartily as unto the Lord, not unto men. It's bigger than just what we do for other people, because we're serving the Lord Christ. And so I'm hoping tonight, I've asked some people to share a little bit, just for a few minutes each, about how they sort of connect the dots between what they do for occupation and who they are as a disciple of Jesus Christ. So we're going to hear from six people tonight, and I'm going to sort of give the order so you can kind of know who's going to be speaking. And after they are all finished, I'll plan to be sort of get up and make some closing comments as well. But the 6 people that we're going to hear from in this order, Crystal Moser, followed by Daryl Bowman, followed by Cecilia Risser, followed by Jared East, followed by Ada Stolzfus, and then concluding is Marlon Hostetter. That's alphabetical by last name for the ladies and for the men, by the way. Thank you. We'll look forward to Crystal.
In case you missed that, Noelle said Mommy's going to preach. When I fill out forms that ask for my occupation, I usually put down one of two things, nurse or homemaker. By training and career, I'm a nurse, and I worked some over the pandemic, but I'm not working currently. And I really enjoyed nursing. I loved the challenge of talking to people that are very different than me, and I enjoyed the challenge, too, of showing respect and honor to every person as someone created by God, especially maybe those that have been had bad experiences with Christians. I kind of like to shake up their view of Christians a little bit. And I do miss rubbing shoulders with the general public in that way. I'm also the office manager for our little hatchery, and that means I do taxes and payroll and anything that's a little more challenging that comes into the office. And Rod says that I serve God in this capacity by keeping him and our business in line. I also help with Rod with his deacon duties, touching base with single ladies, helping with the church accounting, covering when he has meetings, which sometimes mean I have to do more around home or I have to keep the children. I have to be flexible there. I'm learning flexibility. But my main job at this point in life is as a homemaker, and I do all the normal duties that wives and mothers and even the single ladies do, and I'm not really going to talk about that. I think God is in those normal duties, but what sets me apart probably at church and a lot of places is that I'm an adoptive and special needs mom. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means for our family and how I feel like that's God's call on my life right now. It means a lot of appointments, a lot of therapy. We've done occupational therapy, speech therapy, attachment therapy, behavioral therapy, neurofeedback. Right now, we're averaging 3 appointments a week for the children. That's not me and Rod's dentist appointments, that's just for the children. And some of those appointments are for both of the children, some are just for one. So I do lots of driving and lots of organizing our schedule. It means looking and praying for answers to challenges that other people don't have and that other people can't even speak into, even if I do ask for advice. And sometimes it makes us very weary, or makes me weary. It looks like educating other people and educating myself and constantly reading about autism and some of the other things that affect our family and trauma. I end up advocating sometimes. Right now, I've been advocating for Aaron's Acres. It's a camp that Noelle loves to go to in the summer. It's a day camp. Olivia would also like to go, but Olivia has not been able to get in because they don't have enough camp counselors. So if you want a job this summer, it's very flexible. You get to go swimming every day. So I end up doing things like that. Do a lot of school things. I meet with the public school. We have to have education meetings, and Rod and I are always assessing whether school is still a place that's safe for her, or that we feel like is a good environment for her spiritually. And that comes with its own challenges, but it also gives me an opportunity to rub shoulders with teachers and educators and a lot of therapists. I enjoy meeting people, and in the public school system, she's had Christian teachers where she's at now, and I know they probably can't talk about their faith, but I love to tell them how I'm praying for them, and they can't stop me from talking about my faith. And what this looks like in the everyday for me, and how I feel like I'm living out my faith in this way, is I pray with Noelle before she gets on the school bus. I limit our family activities to things that work for her and for Gabe. And sometimes that means we have to say no to fun things. You can ask Gabe. I look for things that I can enjoy with both of my children to build attachment. Gabe and I love to play games together. Noelle and I like to shop and do crafting and Legos together. One of my goals right now is to make home a safe and happy place to be, because sometimes we have to miss out on fun things. So I want home to be a place where we can all enjoy being. It also means that I do prioritize my time alone with God, so that when things are really challenging, which can change overnight for us, then I have the mental fortitude to deal with life. And sometimes, even schedule-wise, we'll say no to things just because if Noelle isn't sleeping for a week, well, then we're all really tired and we don't have any margin. I also try to prioritize time with Rod and making our marriage a priority, so that we are a picture of Christ to the world. It also looks like smiling when people stare at us because we act differently, and not letting it ruin my day. At first it used to, but now I mostly just smile back. It also means being willing to be misunderstood sometimes when people don't understand the decisions we make, and saying it's okay that they don't understand, and I can't always explain, and being okay with not always being able to explain. I do view being a special needs mom as a calling from God. He prepared me for this in very specific ways. I don't always want the challenges, I like the challenges, but my personal mantra is that I can do this for Jesus.
Good evening. I kind of wrote out my answers, so I'm going to try to be interactive, but I'm going to read some of it too. So the first question is, what is my occupation? I currently hold 2 part-time jobs. I'm the IT manager at Game & Accounting, just a couple streets down the road. And basically that means I keep the technology running smoothly for my coworkers. And I'm also a contract Acumatica software developer at my own company, which means I help businesses using Acumatica, which is a software, by changing the software to do what they need. So think of like tailoring a suit or something. So the second question is, how do I see my occupation as a vocation or calling from God? So I'm not really a visionary person. I don't really chase dreams. Instead, I try to make the most of every opportunity that I'm given. And I am where I am in my career because of that, because I have taken advantage of opportunities that have seemingly fallen into my lap. Or because of adversities which somehow turned into advantages. And I believe that that's only because that's what God is doing in my life. So while I don't necessarily know exactly why I am where I am, I definitely believe that this is where God wants me because he shows me that. So I feel like I'm serving God in what I do. First at Game & Accounting, because the mission of Game & Accounting is to help small businesses in the conservative community. I think that's kind of the core mission. They serve just about anybody. Well, right now it's kind of rough, but they serve, generally speaking, anybody who is wants the services they offer, which, yeah, anyway. In the 5 years that I've worked there, I've had very limited interaction with the clients that they serve. And by limited, I mean like maybe 5 times. So my job is to enable my coworkers to provide excellent service to our clients by using technology. So I help them to use technology better, correctly, whatever. So as a result, I've worked much more closely with my coworkers than our clients, and most of my coworkers are Anabaptists. So in this way, I feel like I serve God's people, who in turn serve God's people and other people. But yeah, so I do feel like kind of in a roundabout way, but kind of also in two ways because I'm enabling people to serve people. Anyway, recently though, this job, so this used to be my only job, my main job, but recently this job has become a secondary priority. I'm working there only part-time now, and that's because in September I started my own business, customizing an enterprise business software called Acumatica. And I'm sure you don't really care, but it's it's becoming more and more popular by businesses. And so I basically make the software do things that it doesn't normally do in order to solve business problems. So I network with a very diverse group of people and businesses, which is kind of new for me. I said I worked mostly with Anabaptists up to that point. So I'm still figuring out exactly what that should look like. But I'm trying to be a person of integrity in every situation and carry myself like a child of God, which practically means I try to be efficient. I try to build things that last in order to provide maximum value to my customers. And there have been times in the past that I've wished for different skills and abilities. Like you hear those people, usually, and maybe this is intentional, I think it kind of was, I think we had this discussion, but usually the people that stand here in these types of evening services have dynamic stories about how they are out witnessing every day while they install carpet or whatever they do, and that's not me. So there have been times that I've wished for different skills and abilities or a different job or whatever that would be a little bit more relational, just because it would be fun, it would be fulfilling to be that person. But God has made it very clear to me that that's not my place. So I believe that if I'm doing my best to serve him where I am, he will give me the opportunities he wants me to take. So that's all I have.
Good evening. I recently, in this past fall, started working at Jubilee Ministries, which is a prison ministry. Although most people recognize it as a thrift store, which it also is, the ministry has 6 thrift stores which act as support for the prison ministry. And my official title at Jubilee is the Events and Communications Coordinator, which means that if there's any sort of event happening within the ministry, there's a pretty good chance I was involved at least in some point or part of it. And just to give a few examples of what those events might look like, 2 upcoming ones. The first one is the beginning of April. That's going to be the volunteer dinner, which is just a way of thanking our volunteers because there's like hundreds of volunteers that are involved in the ministry in a variety of different ways. So it's just a way, an evening to provide for them and just a way of saying thank you for all that they do for the ministry. Second upcoming one is the golf tournament. It's just an annual golf tournament. Acts as a fundraiser. That's coming up in May. So those are some things that I've been working on for the past few months now, getting those together. And then the communication side of it is helping get like newsletters together, appeal letters, any sort of communications that goes out. I'm not involved in all the communication, but a lot of it. I help at least in some way, whether it's just stuffing envelopes and sending them out. That is very time consuming, but it's something that I also do. How do I see my occupation as a calling from God? Looking back, it's now incredibly obvious to me that God was leading me to Jubilee. The journey getting there wasn't so obvious, and there were plenty of times that I was like, I don't know what's going on right now. Like, I feel like I should be somewhere now, but I'm not, and it was confusing. I knew I wanted to get into events. It was something that I always thought I would enjoy and have a lot of fun with. But yeah, the search for that job and getting to Jubilee wasn't always so fun. But now that I'm here, I really do enjoy my job and I have a lot of fun with it. And I do feel like God called me to Jubilee not only to serve him, but also to grow spiritually myself. I get the opportunity to work with a variety of people, all my coworkers and the staff at Jubilee are Christians, but it's just interesting because they come from a variety of different churches, from more conservative than what we would be to less conservative what we would be, and so it's really interesting and very challenging, just for me personally and my own faith to have discussions with them. And we have devotions once a week with some of the ladies in the office, and then we also have prayer times and twice a week with just some of my coworkers that I work with on a daily basis. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. And yeah, just walking through my Christian walk with them, I've just been really challenged and strengthened in my walk with the Lord, which I really appreciate. How do I serve Christ in doing my work? So the cool part about my job is I get to enable others to work directly with those affected by incarceration. Just to give an example of two of the programs that Jubilee runs would be chaplaincy and aftercare. So chaplains, we have several chaplains in different facilities throughout the state. And so through fundraising and just through informing people about what Jubilee does, I'm able to help them and keep them funded in their positions. And then the aftercare program is for people coming out of incarceration. It's whether it's through the court that says that they have to come to Jubilee, or whether it's a personal choice and they're looking for change in their life, they can come to Jubilee. And yeah, there's programs set up just to help them restart their lives and also to tell them about the Lord and share the gospel with them. So I really enjoy being a part of all of that and getting to hear stories. That's the part I think I love the most, is that being involved with the communication side, newsletters and stuff, we get to hear the stories coming back. Now, they're not always success stories. Some people do become Christians, leave the program, and then fall back into their old ways. Some people just choose to leave and go back to their old life. But the success stories are so much fun to hear, and I love that they get to come through our department first. And we always enjoy hearing about them, especially if it's somebody that we've gotten to interact with or got to know a little bit. So I really do appreciate the Lord leading me to Jubilee, and I'm really thankful that I get to be a part of God's work there.
Evening. So I also hold two occupations, one full-time and one part-time, kind of, if that makes sense. I work firstly and full-time as an automations engineer, and kind of like Daryl said, you probably don't care, but I'm gonna give you just the 30-second on that. I design, program, build, install, troubleshoot industrial electrical automation systems. And I do that using sensors, PLCs, power control, motor control, actuator, motion, vision, and robotic systems. It's not as cool as it sounds, but I enjoy it very much. My second job, which I get to do one day a week, which I'm very grateful for, is that I get to act as an advanced EMT on an ambulance here in New Holland, actually. So I can do that because I'm self-employed, and I get to do some office work while I'm on shift, while I'm not running on the ambulance. I feel very grateful that I have that opportunity because it balances out my person time and my technology time. Kind of like Crystal mentioned, I really enjoy the people time, the rubbing shoulders with general public. And in emergency circumstances, well, even any circumstance on the ambulance, I don't really have a reason not to treat people as humans. And I think it's probably very good for my mindset, and I think it's one way that God has used me to act out his servant as his servant. So to answer the first question, I think that sums it up. I act as a controls engineer and I guess also an employer. So I intend to be a Christian example, a fair employer to my employees, and treat them appropriately. I see God calling me in these two roles, kind of in very different regards. The controls engineer occupation, I've really actually struggled with how I am to act as a godly worker in that space, because it's a lot of technical stuff. There are some days where I stare at a computer screen all day long, and I don't really interact with people, and it actually grinds my gears a bit because it doesn't feel like a work for God. But then there's times when I get to interact with customers, with vendors, and with my customers' employees, where I get to treat them with respect, as Jesus would, I think. And sometimes my customers' employees, I get to interact with them and give them compliments and interact with them in ways that their employer may do worse at. And I think that's a little space where I get to step into their life, into their workspace, and interact with them. And I also like to say that doing automation, my goal is not to take away jobs. It is to displace the mundane and allow people to actually do their skilled labor. So by freeing up some space in their daily life, doing a mundane task, if I can remove that mundane task and allow them to do their actual skilled labor, I think that's one of the cool things about my job. And then in the EMS world, I get to see people in some of the worst situations of their day, of their life. And sometimes it's not even that bad. But like I said before, it's a space where I don't have a choice. I need to treat them as a human. I need to treat them decently. And I get to show them a little bit of Jesus, even if it's just for an hour. I've had some really impactful moments with I guess mental patients or behaviorally challenged people, really depressed people, where I feel, I hope that I was very impactful, just in a little slice of their life. So two very different ends of the spectrum as far as work is concerned, and how I can enact Jesus' way of life. And I am open to how I could better do that if you have ideas. I think that's all I have.
Well, good evening. The first question, what is my occupation? What work do I do? I'm a registered nurse at two places right now. I'm at Encompass Health in Reading. It's a stroke rehabilitation hospital. And then I'm also a nurse at the Amish Research Clinic in Strasburg, and that's with the University of Maryland. So at the rehab hospital, we have a lot of people that come in from like motor vehicle accidents to elderly that fall. And I work about an average of 1 to 2 days a week there. And then my primary job is to report any changing medical conditions to the doctor and to make sure all the patients are getting their medications and are stable medically. So I guess you could say I'm a licensed drug dealer. I don't know if I should say that over the pulpit. But we have physical and occupational therapists that come and do therapy with the patients. So I just get to make sure that they're medically stable. And then at the research clinic with the University of Maryland, I'm there like 3 days a week. We look at genetics and how they affect medicine. The idea is that they want to be able to personalize medicine in the future. My role in that is collecting data for the scientists. So I go out to ask the Amish people if they want to be a part of the study. And then currently I'm working on a hearing loss study. So if they consent to be a part of the study, I go to their house and we do enrollments and ask medical and history questions. And I do the audiometry testing and do the blood draws and then take all the information and send it off to the University of Maryland so that they can review it and analyze it. How do I see my occupation as a calling from God? I feel like the Bible talks a lot about serving and loving those who are poor, sick, and needy. I definitely felt God's leading in pursuing a nursing degree. It was very, very clear to me. Absolutely love what I do and would love doing it without getting paid. It brings me a lot of fulfillment. I see my occupation as a way to love and serve people who may be at their lowest point in life. And in doing that, fulfilling what the scripture says, being the hands and feet of Jesus. And examples of that are just giving cold water to somebody, or giving an encouraging word, or just bringing a warm blanket. There are many people who don't experience kindness, and you can see that they're very hard. And I love the opportunity to be able to sow seeds of kindness. And through that, I hope that people have the opportunity to know how much they're loved by God. How do I serve Christ or his people in doing my work? And this was a really good question for me. And it was really good for me to think about it. I think of the Bible verse in Galatians 2:20 where it says, I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Being a Christ follower, I only want Christ to shine out of me. And I think in practical terms, I think character and how I respond to patients and coworkers is how I serve Christ at my work. My goal is to spend time with Jesus every day, so that when I'm under pressure at work, which there can be a lot of, can be very stressful at times, that I can respond the way Jesus would. And I often pray during the day, just, Jesus, help me, I need you. And I find it's hardest to respond well in a situation when I'm most disconnected with Jesus. So that's, my goal is to be connected with him so that I can respond in a way that is godly. I don't always respond like I should, but I would like to choose to continue to ask Jesus for help and wisdom to know how to respond to situations. I had many interesting conversations with patients. We had a lady at the rehab that was being discharged, and I took her out to the sidewalk. She was in the COVID unit, and she just seemed really lonely, and we just got started talking, and she just started crying, and she basically told her story in a nutshell. And when I asked her if she was a Christian, she said she was, and that God was the reason she was able to pull through life. I was able to pray with her, and she said she just bawled and said, I'm so grateful I met you, and couldn't stop thanking me. So that's very fulfilling, being able to walk alongside of people. Another time, this was when I was working at Lancaster General. A lady had just been diagnosed with colon cancer and was really struggling with the diagnosis. She was 80 and had decided to not go for further treatment. And over the same time, my aunt was on the floor above her with the same diagnosis. And so I could really empathize with her. I told her about my aunt and that she had the same diagnosis, and she was also not going for further treatment. And so I was able to pray with her. We cried together, and it's in those moments I feel like I get a glimpse of what it's like to walk through the valley of shadow of death with people. And yet Jesus is so near, even in those moments, even in those hard diagnoses and painful things. I've seen life come into this world and life leave the world, and I can say there's so much fulfillment being there, just being there with others in the process. My prayer is that, with the psalmist, is that God would create in me a pure heart and renew a steadfast spirit within me. I also love the quote, we are simply called to be the hands and feet of Jesus, willing to love our neighbor, and leave our comfort for the sake of those who need it most.
Okay, good evening. So I work at Upward Broadband. We are a WISP, which is a wireless internet service provider. Basically, what we do is we put antennas on a vertical asset. Most times it's a tower, a cell tower, or maybe like a telephone pole on top of a mountain. And to get internet to your house, you have to have a clear line of sight to that tower. And we put a little receiving antenna on, and you get internet. So no, I'm not techie like these guys. People, when I tell them sometimes that I work at Upward Broadband, they're like, oh, you could fix my computer. It's like, no, I don't even know what internet is. So just get that out of the way. I work on the the infrastructure side. So at existing tower sites, I do site prep work, like maybe pour a little concrete pad, put a shed there or an electronics cabinet, trenching, very basic electrical work, service, knocking down bees' nests, spraying weeds, whatever, a bunch of random stuff. Just started doing a little bit of tower climbing, so that's also interesting. So I just thought a little brief snapshot of what this coming week is looking like. Monday, tomorrow, probably going out to a site Derek and I were at this past week. It's the site of we're going to be building a small 70-foot tower, and which is something new for us. We haven't really done that yet. And so I'll be doing the electrical work there on Monday. Tuesday, we have going to be installing a generator, not me, but somebody else. So I'll be helping there to install a generator at another site. Wednesday and Thursday will be fly days, which is where we're going to be flying 6 dishes, microwave dishes. So that'll be interesting. And then Fridays typically clean up and kind of prep for the next week type of day. So just wanted to talk. This evening is titled "Connecting the Dots: How I Serve Christ in My Occupation." So spoiler alert, I don't have an answer. I appreciated the last time we had this. How long ago was that? Oh, a year. That's crazy. So a year, it was really great to hear people share, and it's been really good to hear people here tonight. But I've thought about it, not only in terms of my job currently, but even in previous jobs. First question, do I see my occupation, or how do I see my occupation as a calling from God? So do I feel called to Upward Broadband or to my work? And I would say the short answer is no. Kind of the second question, how do I serve Christ or his people in doing my work? So if I can rephrase that question, how I kind of view that question is, practically, how do I make my vocation also a ministry? So I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to say up front here, I want to maybe bring just a different, maybe a slightly different perspective, and just hear me out as I go through this. I think for me, when I think of work, ministry, balance, a helpful framework that I've thought about it for my life is in terms of seasons. So I don't think there's one perfect job and one perfect ministry that I'm gonna find that's gonna take me the whole way to 70. I look at biblical characters like Jeremiah and Moses, Joseph, Jesus, even Paul, and I think their life had different seasons. Some more focused on maybe occupational work, and some either a mix, and some maybe exclusively ministry. Paul sometimes was focused exclusively on ministry, and sometimes he was making tents and sharing the gospel on the weekends. I think, to be clear, I think we can serve Christ in both realms. As a number of people shared here, we have work ethic, integrity, our coworkers, speech, our actions. So I think those are all great ways we can serve Christ. At the same time, I'm talking about my job, and I would just say that I don't consider my job my ministry. I haven't had one meaningful spiritual conversation with a tower yet. But that's not to say, again, that I can't serve Christ. But I'm wondering, and I've thought about, what if by trying to just relabel my occupation as my ministry, I end up watering down both? And so what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that some people can't, or that some occupations don't lend better to that. I think there's a lot of teachers here. I think even some of the other people that shared, their occupation tends to lend better as a occupation ministry combination. But I would just say for me in my job right now, I haven't found that to be the case. So here's kind of how I think about my work and ministry. And you can push back or disagree if you want. I would welcome that. I would say that I'm in a season of occupational focus. I try to make as much money as I can in this season of my life, and Lord willing, in a year and a half, we will be debt-free, house and everything. And I view that as that financial freedom will allow more ministry-focused opportunities outside of work. Right now, our work with I-58 is kind of what I view as our ministry focus, and that's kind of outside of my job. I think we can talk all day about how we want our ministry and our work to line up, but yet, how many people are financially at a place where they actually they're actually able to have a more of a ministry focus outside of work. So I didn't define ministry, and I think that's the critical question for each one of us. So what is the ministry that God is calling you to? So for me, if it's only not to be somebody who doesn't swear, drink, or smoke on the job site, who works hard, who maybe goes the extra mile for customers, I could say that would be representing Christ well, but I wouldn't call that my ministry. Jesus says that on the final judgment, or Jesus will say on the final judgment day, when have you fed the hungry, clothed the poor, visited the sick, welcomed the stranger, and other acts, similar to that. I think these acts and those like it take intentional time and effort. Most jobs don't tend to, or don't lend well to that type of ministry. Again, not saying that it can't be, just for me personally, it doesn't. If there's not intentionality put into specific ministry, whatever it is that God's calling you to, I don't think we will tend to do much ministry at work, and our ministry outside of work could suffer. I will say, maybe it's just a little bit of a different way of viewing it, but I do enjoy, I have enjoyed hearing people share both this time and last time. And I think I think there are definitely occupations that can blend that work ministry. I guess I'm just at a spot where I don't view my job as my ministry. So a few closing comments. I think we can absolutely represent Christ no matter where we are and no matter what we do. We're commanded to. To me, I think we should just make a distinction of between just being a good Christian or representing Christ well and doing ministry. Like I said, I think some jobs lend well to that, to combining that, but I would say those jobs are rare. And so I view my job as a means to enable other ministry opportunities outside of work. Maybe that's the wrong conclusion or the wrong view, but you can discuss that with me later. Thank you.
right. Well, thank you, each one of you, for sharing tonight. It's good to hear a sort of little window into some of the folks here, into their lives and what they do, how they think about what they do, and appreciate each one of you who shared and everyone who came tonight as well. I think at this time I'm going to ask Austin to lead us in one more song, and then following that I'll have a final prayer. Austin?
894, Hymns of the Church, 894. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never dying soul to sing and keep the sky. To serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do Master's will. On me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and all the event, Lord, prepare a strength to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely. Assured if my trust betray, I shall never die.
Thank you, Austin, for leading us in that song. Let's all stand. We'll have a final prayer to conclude tonight's service. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for giving us today. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to gather together. Lord, I thank you for the calling that you place on our lives. First of all, a calling to be your children, your sons and daughters. Secondly, a calling that many of us have with relationships in our families, and also calling that we have in the line of our livelihood and our vocations and our occupations. Lord, I pray that we could recognize your callings, that we could be faithful to your callings, and give us the strength to follow you in all of those aspects of our lives. Help us to depend on your Spirit and to sense and discern your direction. And I pray as we go from here, the coming week, coming months, years, as much time as we have here, as you have for us, I pray that we could be faithful to be your sons and daughters and your disciples, that we could be people who exemplify you, people who are your hands and feet in touching the lives of people with whom we come into contact. So I pray that you would enable us to do that, especially as we think about the coming week here. Thank you again for the opportunity to be together, Lord. Pray that you would give us safety as we depart from here.